So we'll start with the metabolism part now. Okay, so we are going to differentiate the or classify the metabolism part into total five major components. We'll start with the catabolism first, then will be about the anabolism, then there is the other parts, that is ketone body metabolism, cholesterol, and then there will discuss about the lipoprotein. Why catabolism first? It is just like a major common play where once it is complete, it goes into the TCA cycle. What you generate is the acetate. So from that, we can discuss about the anabolism. They are almost linked. They are in a way as a pathway. They are a little bit linked. So once we have enough idea about the catabolism, it is going to be easy for us to identify how this generation of fatty acid happens inside our body. Then we'll discuss about the other components. I think it's okay. So this is just a major idea about how lipid metabolism happens. Whatever the diet or extra component comes, that is converted into fatty acid. Once they are esterified, they are coming into the triacylglycerol. If lipolysis happens, they come back to the fatty acid. If beta oxidation happens, it generates into the acetyl coenzyme. If you have too much amount of acetyl coenzyme, that creates the lipogenesis, which again generates the fatty acid. So this is your pool. Here is your major component generation of for lipogenesis and oxidation part. Once it comes to the acetyl coenzyme, as you can have already gone through carbohydrate metabolism, it can go back, sorry, into the TCA cycle and ultimate oxidation can occur. From here, it can generate cholesterol and steroids or ketone bodies. Okay, so from this triacylglycerol and other lipoprotein metabolism also comes into the. So this you have to remember how this basic idea of lipid metabolism goes into. So we'll start with the fatty acid metabolism. Basically, we'll talk about the triacylglycerol only major because it is the major part, almost 84 or 90% of stored energy. So here, what we have to do is fatty acid, once we want to burn them, they have to be moved out from the triacylglycerol. What is triacylglycerol? Three fatty acid with the alcohol molecule, that is glycerol. So they are to be removed and then oxidized. So then and then only they can provide the energy. So how do we utilize this? There are three stages. First is mobilization. Whatever the fatty acid is there inside the TG triglyceride, they are into the tissues, moved out. Then you activate them and transport them into the mitochondria, and then you actually do the oxidation into the acetyl coenzyme. Once we generate the acetyl coenzyme, there is a common pathway, TCA cycle, then ETC, and then there is a oxidative phosphorylation. So this is how we do mobilization. Whatever the store is there, basically adipose tissue, they are liberated over with the help of hormone sensitive lipase. Once the lipase comes into the action here, into the tissue, they are seen, they are liberated, fatty acids are separated, glycerol is separated, they come into the circulation and they go into the muscle or liver. Glycerol part goes into the liver. How does this hormone sensitive lipase work? So this is how it works. Hormone comes over here, receptor, GTP coupled cyclic AMP activation occurs, then it generates or converts, activates the protein kinase, and ultimately it activates the lipase, which gets converted into or basically it gets phosphorylated, which in turn converts triacylglycerol to diacylglycerol, and again then free fatty acids are liberated one by one, triacyl to diacyl, monoacyl, and then glycerol only remains. Okay, so inside the liver, you have a glycerol. What happens once it reaches the glycerol? Gets converted into dihydroxyacetone phosphate. Now you remember this part. It is a component of glycolysis which can generate the pyruvate. Or this DHAP can go into the gluconeogenesis to generate the glucose. So body can generate glucose from the glycerol, but the problem is that whatever the energy is coming, glucose molecule is going to be very scarce from the generation of, or sorry, oxidation of the triglycerides. So saturated fatty acids, they go through beta oxidation, peroxismal fatty acid oxidation, alpha oxidation, omega oxidation. And unsaturated fatty acids go through the modified beta oxidation pathway. Okay, so we'll start with the beta oxidation. Here, what we do is that fatty acid oxidation starts with the beta carbon. If you just remember the how we name the scheme, name the omega scheme of the naming nomenclature. So here it starts with the beta carbon, and then one by one, two carbon atoms are removed one by one is the acetyl coenzyme A, and ultimately it is completely degraded. So now how it happens, we'll discuss. So one by one steps. First is activation of the fatty acid into the cytosol. Then this activated fatty acid into the mitochondria are transported, and beta oxidation proper is there. So this happens inside the outer mitochondrial membrane. Remember this. It is not happening inside the inner mitochondrial membrane. This is happening in the outer mitochondrial membrane for long chain fatty acid. What it does is it activates the component. Coenzyme A is added to the component. So once coenzyme A is added, it is activated. So acyl coenzyme A is generated. Now these activated fatty acids, they are then transported inside the mitochondria with the help of carnitine shuttle. Okay. Here acyl coenzyme A is removed, acyl carnitine is generated, goes inside the matrix. Here acyl carnitine is removed, again for acyl coenzyme A is generated, and then goes. So this is a cyclical event. So what happens overall inside the beta oxidation? What you have is the, just we'll take the example of palmityl coenzyme. So this is your activated palmitic acid. Here coenzyme A is attached. So first carbon, that is after first carbon, that is the alpha carbon. Then there is a beta carbon. So it will start from the beta carbon. You can see this. Then comes the 4. Every 2 carbon, it is going to cut out one by one. So here this part is going to remain as a acetyl coenzyme, and each and every component, they are going to be liberated. Basically, we are having a 7 cycle of beta oxidation, the carbon. So this is total 8 acetyl coenzyme are coming out of the palmitic acid. This is also going to liberate 7 NADH as well as 7 FADH2 in the process. Now, what happens in the total process? This is just a separation or generation of the three acid. First is oxidation by FAD, hydration, oxidation by NAD, and then there is a thiolysis. So what happens, again, we'll just discuss acyl coenzyme. Anything can be there. Palmityl acyl coenzyme can be. It generates into the trans-acyl coenzyme with the help of FADH2. So this is, it is going to convert into the oxidation. What it generates is adds the component over here. Then 3-hydroxy-acyl coenzyme is generated. Hydration, water molecule is added in the process. Then 3-ketoacyl coenzyme, it converts again goes into the oxidation. Here your NADH is generated. And then acyl CoA, enzyme A, which was initially there, but again now whatever the limit is there, that is shortened by two component, and one acetyl coenzyme A is liberated. What we are adding is OASH, that is hyolysis. So now this component is liberated as a side acetyl coenzyme A, and this is remaining as a less minus 2 carbon acyl coenzyme. Now this process keeps on going as a 7 cycle. If you are to take the palmitic acid as an example, it is going to go through the 7 cycle. That's why it is going to generate the 7 FADH2. This is 14 or 21, and this is your energetics. Total 8 acetyl coenzyme A generates. Ultimately, it generates 96 or 80. So total ATP generated is almost 129, or right now, according to newer classification, is 106. Now you can see a simple small molecule of palmitic acid, which is a 16 carbon compound, generates very much amount of energy. That is almost triples the energy that is getting generated from the glucose molecule. So it's a very rich source of energy. This is just a complete cycle. This is your initial stage, which is breaking down. This is acetyl coenzyme is generated, goes into the TCA cycle, NADH, FADH, and ultimately we are generating the ATPs. So now how this process gets regulated. One is requirement of, or sorry, one requirement is availability of fatty acids, synthesis of fatty acids. That is hormone, glucagon, epinephrine, or synthesis of fatty acid that is going to inhibit the kinetic acyl transferase. Means it is going to block the process. So what is the significance? One major talk we already discussed. It is a very good source. When there is a requirement, it provides very good amount of energy. Another is generation of ketone bodies plus some other biomolecules from acetyl coenzyme also can be generated. So 20-30% requirement ketone bodies are generated in diabetic starvation, plus there is acetyl CoA. So now here, what you generate, lastly, what you are going to get is the propionyl coenzyme A and acetyl coenzyme. That is important. Propionyl coenzyme A is a 3-carbon compound. So that is where our problem starts. Okay, for the odd chain fatty acids. Lastly, we are going to generate propionyl, which is not utilized, it cannot be utilized in the TCA cycle. So we'll have to do something about it. So what is going to happen? Once we go through the beta oxidation of regular up to end, once we reach the propionyl coenzyme A, here what we are going to do is carboxylase will add carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide we utilize with the help of ATP, generates methylmalonyl coenzyme A, then it is going to convert into the succinyl coenzyme. Okay. Now, if you have a unsaturated fatty acids, it will require some extra enzymes converting into the regular compound. And in peroxisome, it is going to be oxidized differently. You can see over here, this is your regular beta oxidation. In peroxisome, it is going to go in a little bit different way. NADH again gets reutilized, and this acetyl coenzyme, whatever it is, this is getting exported and then goes into the mitochondria for TCA cycle. Now coming to the alpha oxidation. It's a very minor pathway. Here it starts from the alpha carbon instead of the beta carbon. And here one carbon gets removed and released as a CO2 instead of coming as a acetyl coenzyme A. and the place where it occurs is the endoplasmic reticulum. So how does it happen with the omega oxidation? Another minor pathway. What happens is starts from the omega end, the methyl end. So it goes backwards compared to the oxidation, which is going one side from one to end of carbon. It is coming from end to start. But what happens here is that initially it removes the component, then again goes into the beta oxidation. Initially it generates the carboxyl group only. Now, what happens is that if you have a impaired oxidation, that may generate the hypoglycemia. These are the disorders which are related with the fatty acid oxidation, problem with the fatty acid. Okay. What happens in carnitine deficiency? You generate the muscle cramps and weakness in the newborns and preterm infants. Jamaican vomiting sickness, I think we had this question also. There is a poster also on this. Basically, it's because of the unripe fruit of a key tree that is having a toxin called as hypoglycemia. What it does is that it inactivates the acyl coenzyme A dehydrogenase, and that creates the problem with the beta oxidation and then ultimately generates the hypoglycemia. Then there is another disease called as Rapson's disease, neurological disorder, and what it creates is the accumulation of phytanic acid. What you get is the cerebral ataxia, peripheral neuropathy, as well as retinitis pigmentosa. Zellweger syndrome, it's a rare inherited disease present because of the beta oxidation that is not happening inside the peroxisomes, not in the regular, but in the peroxisome. Now coming to the opposite component, that is synthesis. Okay, so there are three types: de novo synthesis, elongation of fatty acids, and then there is a desaturation. Here, de novo synthesis, you generate the saturated fatty acids and it occurs inside the cytoplasm. Remember, your oxidation is occurring inside the mitochondria. Now, initially you generate the short chains of the fatty acid, then it can be elongated depending on the requirement. And this can happen both in cytoplasm as well as mitochondria. Desaturation, where we have to generate the double bond. So that occurs inside the microsomes only. So this is the overall picture. What you get is from acetyl coenzyme A, you generate the palmitic acid, that is de novo. Then if you require longer fatty acid, then go for the elongation process, that is stearic acid. And if you want a double bond, then there is a desaturation process, that is creating the folic acid. So we'll talk about the de novo synthesis, the definition, differences, phases. Okay. Saturated fatty acid from acetyl coenzyme. Now, acetyl coenzyme is a totally different component. It is not considered as a lipid component. Okay, and that is coming from the glucose. So, carbohydrate, whatever you are eating in a large amount, can contribute to too much amount of fat in your body. These are the two places where it can happen: liver and adipose tissue. And depending on the requirement, it can happen inside the lactating mammary gland as well. Basically, new synthesis. Here, it will require acetyl coenzyme A as a primer. Okay, sorry. So, what is the difference? Synthesis versus degradation. Here, your intermediates are linked with the carrier proteins, while degradation it is linked with the coenzyme reduced. Place is different cytosol versus mitochondria. Enzymes. With synthesis, there is single complex enzyme. With degradation, there are different types of enzymes and different types of redox coenzymes are utilized. Here NADP, here you have the NAD. So don't forget, remember this. This is the major part where students make mistake. Synthesis requires NADP, while degradation is done with the NAD and FAD. So one by one, we are going to talk about the phases. There are three phases, 1, 2, and 3. Phase 1, there is a transport of substrates into the cytosol, basically acetyl coenzyme, and carboxylation of acetyl coenzyme to malonyl coenzyme. Then utilization of substrate to form the palmitate in phase 2 and by the enzyme complex fatty acid synthesis. This is the single enzyme that we discussed about. And then phase 3, there is elongation and desaturation that can help in the different generation of different fatty acids. One by one, transport of substrate into the cytosol. Okay, so what you have by the glucose degradation is acetyl coenzyme that is happening inside the mitochondria. Now oxaloacetate bind and citrate will be generated that is going to go out into the cytosol. Here citrated oxaloacetate gets liberated and acetyl coenzyme comes out. That converts into the malate, pyruvate and goes back. This is a circular event. How acetyl coenzyme comes out of the mitochondria into the cytosol. Then comes the carboxylation. Whatever the acetyl coenzyme came out gets converted into malonyl coenzyme with the help of acetyl coenzyme carboxylase, which requires carbon dioxide and utilization of ATP. Remember this, this is the place where you will require the biotin vitamin. So this is the process. Now comes the phase 2. We are going to utilize the complex enzyme, a very large enzyme that is going to convert your malonyl coenzyme into the palmitate. So fatty acid synthase, it's a multi-enzyme complex and almost 7 enzyme activities are combined together here along with the acyl carrier protein. What basically happens is that your malonyl coenzyme or substrate is bound to one single carrier protein and each and every time enzyme comes and works upon it. So which are the enzymes? Acetyl transacylase, malonyl transacylase, ketoacyl synthase, ketoacyl reductase, dehydroxyacyl hydratase, enol reductase, and thioesterase. This is a simpler structure that you can draw in your exam. But basically remember this, it's a dimer. So you have single multi-enzyme complex containing two component, two multi-enzyme, 1 and 2, and there is a subunit division where it is a functional as well as actual division. So when they are separated, this is considered like ketoacyl, acetyl transacylase like this. But working condition, once they are in the dimer form, it is going to be like this vertical structure. So we'll start with the generation. Okay, this is your acyl carrier, sorry, protein. Along with that, you have the pantothenic acid, and where your malonyl coenzyme, which was initially generated, acetyl coenzyme came out and converted into malonyl coenzyme. This is the place, the sulfonyl group, where it gets attached. Now comes the starting. So this is the opposite end. This is going to be starting on the opposite. This is your oxidation and this is your synthesis. So acyl ACP, ketoacyl ACP, hydroxyacyl ACP, enol ACP, and then you have one extra carbon. So malonyl coenzyme gets added in the process in your acyl carrier protein, and if the chain gets elongated in this process. Here what we are generating doing in the beta oxidation, you already have +2 number, and that's going back opposite end. We are liberating the acetyl coenzyme. So here you have liberation of the acetyl coenzyme in the oxidation. Malonyl coenzyme is incorporated in this process and carbon dioxide, because malonyl coenzyme is a 3-carbon compound. So here FAD and NAD, and you can see over here is NADPH. That is the difference. Process is same. Your enzymes are going to be different, but the intermediates are going to be remaining same. So this is your process added component. I'll just fast forward this part. We'll have a condensation and one animation is there. Okay, this is reduction. Then there is a dehydration. And again reduction. Ultimately, you generate the palmitate. I'll just show you the actual animation. Okay, so this is what we are going to generate. What you have is the acetyl coenzyme, and from there we have generated the malonyl coenzyme, and this is our fatty acid synthase complex. Acetyl coenzyme, malonyl transacyl, ketoacyl reductase, hydratase, and enol reductase. So what is going to happen? You have a free acetyl coenzyme and one malonyl coenzyme. Now this comes as acetyl as enzyme. Coenzyme is liberated. Here malonyl coenzyme gets incorporated into the S enzyme, and acetyl malonyl S enzyme is generated. That is with the help of malonyl transacylase. Now going ahead, now we have utilized the malonyl. Going ahead, carbon dioxide is removed. What we have is the ketoacyl S enzyme. That is S enzyme means this fatty acid synthase. Okay. Then going ahead, here we are liberating or adding the NADPH, 3-hydroxyethyl, ketoacyl to 3-hydroxyethyl. That is reductase. We are adding the hydrogen atom in the process. Now we are removing the H2O. So what you have is the unsaturated S enzyme, and ultimately, again, sorry, not this ultimate, again another hydrogen atom is removed. So what we have is acyl S enzyme. Now this going forward with the help of enol reductase, what we have is enol S enzyme. Now what we have is that from malonyl enzyme plus acetyl coenzyme, this is the 4-carbon compound, and this process gets repeated 7 times again and again. Here this S-acyl enzyme, what you are seeing, is going to be utilized as acetyl coenzyme. This is where acetyl coenzyme will come as acyl S enzyme will be utilized as a acetyl coenzyme. Again, malonyl coenzyme will be added to this acyl S enzyme, and you generate the S enzyme. Now we again add H2O, and we generate the palmitic acid, and your complex gets separated. This synthase is separated. Okay. So this is how we generate the palmitic acid. This is the complete system. Okay. And this is the complete overall process as 8 acetyl coenzyme plus 7 ATP, 14 NADPH plus 14H plus generates the palmitate, 8 coenzyme, 7 ADP, 7 phosphate groups, 14 NADP plus, and 6 H2O. How this regulation occurs? By the enzyme, metabolites, end products, hormones, and diet. These are the 5 factors which are going to be doing the controls. Enzyme, coenzyme, carboxylase, initial, metabolite, citrate availability, end products, Palmitoyl coenzyme A is too much, it is not going to go forward. Hormones, insulin and glucagon, both will have a opposite effect. And diet. If you have a high carbohydrate diet, fatty acid synthesis will go forward. So this is how each and every one affects. Glucagon will be blocking, insulin will be increasing, citrate will have a positive effect, while palmitic coenzyme will have a negative effect. Plus, you can see positive. Insulin will, these three are positive. High fat, negative. Starvation will have a negative, and diabetes will have a negative effect. Then comes the elongation part. We have generated only 16 carbon. What we, if we want to have a 18 carbon? So once we have a palmitate, desaturation can go into palmitoyl or stearate. So we again add different components to elongate the compound. Or if we want to desaturate, this is the process where desaturase is utilized from single carbon to double carbon. And whatever the single carbon, cytochrome B5 is utilized, again here your NADP plus is getting NADPH is utilized for the desaturation process. And water molecule is liberated against utilization of the oxygen. So this completes our fatty acid synthesis. Now talking about the ketone body metabolism. So we'll discuss about the definition, significance, synthesis, utilization, and actual ketosis. So what are ketone bodies? Basically, they are metabolic products which are produced in excess during the excessive breakdown. Initially, we discussed about the fatty acid oxidation. Here we discussed that even a single molecule of fatty acid can generate a very large amount of energy, which is through acetyl coenzyme A. But what if too much amount of fatty acids are getting converted into acetyl coenzyme? What will happen to this acetyl coenzyme? Our PCA cycle gets saturated. Then what will happen to the acetyl coenzyme? That generates into the ketone bodies. So these are the three ketone bodies which are considered for our study purpose: acetone, acetoacetate, and beta hydroxybutyrate. Out of this, acetone is evaporable, so it gets excreted through the lungs. So working are beta hydroxybutyrate and acetoacetate. So how these are generated? Acetoacetate is the main, which is generated from the acetyl coenzyme, can be spontaneously converted with the liberation of carbon dioxide into acetone, or with the help of NADH, it can convert it to beta hydroxybutyrate. Basically, what is the significance is when there is no amount of glucose available, they can serve as an alternate source of energy. So they are generated basically under cellular energy deprivation condition. So once I think through glucose metabolism, carbohydrate metabolism, you know that your glucose is the sole source for brain as a energy. But when there is no glucose available, glucose will take up the ketone bodies for the energy purpose. So we'll start with the how they are generated, ketogenesis. Only inside the liver. Remember this. Two acetyl coenzyme are combined together with the help of removal of coenzyme A reduced form. Iolase enzyme is coming into the action, generates the acetoacetyl coenzyme A, that's converted into HMG coenzyme A. Another molecule of acetyl coenzyme A is added. So basically, three acetyl coenzyme A are getting added to convert into the HMG OAC, and from there acetoacetate is generated. Again, whatever the acetyl coenzyme was added comes as a acetyl coenzyme lyase that can go into the acetone or generate the beta hydroxybutyrate. Okay, so this is how we generate the ketone bodies. Now, regulation depends on the free fatty acid and different levels. First level, the lipolysis works on the insulin or glucagon. Entry of fatty acid into mitochondria, CAT1 enzyme, and third is depend on the oxaloacetate availability. How oxidation of acetylcholine coenzyme A is there. If less amount of is there, then it is going to help generate the keto acid. Then lysis part, how it is getting degraded. Remember this, they are not oxidized inside the liver. They are generated in liver only, but they are utilized by the extrahepatic tissues, brain, heart, skeletal muscles, and kidneys. So how does this ketolysis happen? Remember, acetoacetate and beta hydroxybutyrate both are interconvertible. So whenever there is a requirement, acetoacetate is generated, gets converted into acetoacetyl coenzyme with the help of succinyl coenzyme. Remember this, that is coming from the acetyl coenzyme only. Okay. Now, once we have the acetoacetyl coenzyme, it can add coenzyme with the help of thiolase, which was generating the acetoacetyl coenzyme, can break down it into the acetyl coenzyme. So these two acetyl coenzyme can again go into the requirement of energy generation. So this is the how they are utilized. Inside liver, what we have is the acetyl coenzyme, which goes into the generation of ketone bodies. Now, in blood, either in urine or lung, they can pass on. But in extrahepatic tissues, these ketone bodies can convert into acetyl coenzyme and red side go to into the citric acid cycle. Or remember this, ketone bodies are generated inside the liver. So your energy deprivation is here in the extrahepatic tissues, not in the liver hepatic tissue. So transportation and utilization is becoming necessary here. So this is the complete process. Ketone bodies from liver and utilization. Free fatty acid to acetoacetate. Your ketone body is generated and hydroxide. They go into the extrahepatic tissue like muscle. Again, acetoacetate goes back. Acetyl coenzyme is generated, and this is utilized inside the CA cycle. Now coming to the collective term, that is ketosis. It's a disorder of excessive production of ketone bodies, too much amount of ketone bodies. You know what, where can happen? When there is a carbohydrate deprivation or impaired uptake of glucose by the peripheral tissues. What will be the findings? Ketonemia, too much amount of ketone, acetone breath. Because acetoacetate is generating in too much amount, it is going to create a acetone breath. Too much amount of uh, potassium will be there, ketone bodies will be coming out of the urine, and because ketone bodies are acidic in nature, it can cause the metabolic acidosis. So how do we manage the cases? Provide carbohydrate injection if there is a diabetes mellitus, provide with the glucose or insulin. Now coming to the cholesterol metabolism, then there will be a lipoprotein metabolism. Okay. Remember, this is a major staple of the animal tissue. Okay, most part is synthesized inside the body only. This is the structure. What are the function? Again, we are discussing membrane formation, steroid hormones, cholesterol ester, bile cell, vitamin D as. So how does this cholesterol biosynthesis occurs? All of the carbon atoms are coming from the acetyl coenzyme A, and two sites are there, liver as well as intestine, that can generate the cholesterol. Now there is again de novo synthesis, step by step. One is generation of mevalonate, then isoprenoid units, then comes the squalene, then generation of lanosterol, and ultimately generates degradation, through degradation generates the cholesterol. So one by one, we'll discuss the steps. Remember this, initial steps are a little bit important. Uh, Another steps in the intermediate are a little bit less important. So what we have is acetyl coenzyme A. The help of thiolase generates acetyl coenzyme A, then creates HMG coenzyme. Okay, and here from there, this is the part. Until this is basically our, sorry, this is only keto body generation part. Then comes the reductase part, which reduces the component. NADPH is utilized and it converts into the mevalonate. And then there are several steps to cholesterol. So how these steps are there? We have up to reach to mevalonate. Then goes into the isopentenyl phosphate, which is 5 carbon. Then up to 30 carbons choline is generated, that's converted into lanosterol, and then degradation comes into the cholesterol. So HMG CoA reductase is the major enzyme which is regulating the generation of the cholesterol, and which is regulated by various components, insulin, glucagon, as well as intermediary products. Okay. These are some of the inhibitors of HMG CoA reductase that we normally utilize to control the cholesterol production. Now compounds which are generated from the cholesterol: bile acid, vitamin D, and steroid hormones. They have a 24 carbon atom, basically cholic acid and quinodeoxycholic acids. Cholesterol, 7 hydroxyl cholesterol, and then with multiple steps it goes into the bile acid. Steroid hormones. Cholesterol gets converted to progesterone, and from there it can convert into glucocorticoids, androgens, on mineralocorticoids, or estrogen. Vitamin D. Dehydrogenase is going to convert into dehydrocholesterol, and in the presence of UV light, it gets converted into cholecalciferol, then goes into the kidney, and active vitamin D3 is generated. So excretion is through feces. Basically, you cannot oxidize the cholesterol. It should come out as it is. Almost per day, around 1 gram of cholesterol is excreted through this. What happens if there is a problem? There are two conditions. One is hypercholesterolemia, familial, and another is atherosclerosis. What happens in hypercholesterolemia? Malfunction of LDL receptors is happening. Here in atherosclerosis, cholesterol is deposited in the body. Okay, so let's talk about the lipoprotein metabolism. So what are lipoproteins? Basically lipids which are absorbed from the diets. They should be transported to the various cells for the utilization as well as storage form. Now the problem with the lipids is they are insoluble in the water, so they cannot be transported into the aqueous plasma. So what body has done is that they have combined them with the proteins so that water miscible components can be generated. These are called as lipoproteins. So what is the general structure? Basically, it contains a non-polar lipid core and outer layer of esters along with the protein component, so that it becomes soluble inside the plasma. So this outer moiety of protein component is called as apolipoprotein or apoproteins. You can see over here in the structure that the outer phospholipid is there, there are peripheral as well as integral protein is there, and there is an internal lipid core which contains cholesterol ester as well as triglycerides. Now, how do we classify them? Based on their density, which is basically done through the ultracentrifugation, and depending on their flotation constant, we can classify them based on the classify them on total 5 components: chylomicrons, VLDL, IDL, LDL, and HDL. Per se, that is very low density lipoprotein, intermediate density lipoprotein, low density lipoprotein, and high density lipoprotein. Now we'll just discuss about this, how they are coming out. So if you are going to take a ultracentrifuged test tube, which you can see over here, if that is to be decided and which component is there, like protein, what is the percentage of triglyceride, cholesterol esters as well as apoproteins, and what are their functions, we can classify them accordingly. So if you are going to do the centrifugation, the topmost part will be the chylomicrons, which are going to be the largest in size and will have a lowest component of protein, and maximum component of triglycerides will have a B48 apoproteins. Then there is a VLDL, which has a 10% proteins as well as 56% triglycerides and 15% cholesterol. Here your apoprotein is different, that is B100. Then comes the IDL, which is going to have a 10% protein and 34% cholesterol esters, which is also called intermediate, in between the VLDL as well as LDL. Then comes the LDL, which has around 20% protein and cholesterol esters are a little bit higher. And you can see over here the size gets reduced. Basically, their density is getting increased in the process. You can see over here HDL, which has the maximum amount of protein and lowest amount of triglyceride as well as cholesterol esters, and it has a different kind of apoproteins. And last is the albumin fatty acid complex, which is the densest. So this is how we classify the lipoproteins based on their density. Second is based on their electrophoretic mobilities. If you are going to subject them to the electrophoresis, they can be separated into alpha, pre-beta, beta as well as broad beta lipoprotein. So those component, basically those component which has a maximum amount of protein, they are going to move fastest in the electrophoretic mobility. You can see over here alpha lipoprotein, pre-beta, beta lipoprotein, and their according percentage in the process. Third classification is based on the nature of apoprotein content, which is the encapsulated component. HDL has alpha lipoprotein, which is also called as apolipoprotein A. LDL has a beta lipoprotein B100, while chylomicron has a B48. While ApoE, C, and other things, they are normally found in each and every kind of lipoproteins. So what are these apolipoproteins? Okay, so they are mainly synthesized in the liver, and some amount is synthesized in other organs as well as other cells and intestinal cells as well. Basically, along with the solubilizing this lipid part in the lipoprotein structure, they have some specific functions as well, like ApoA1. It activates the ALCAT, lecithin cholesterol acyltransferase. Basically, it's an atherogenic component. ApoC2, it activates the lipoprotein lipase. ApoB100, it's a component of LDL, and which is one of the largest amino proteins which is present inside the body. ApoB48, they are normally synthesized in the intestinal cells. Remember this, ApoB100 and B48, they are coming out of the same gene, but only problem is that mRNA editing happens inside the intestinal cell, while in liver cell it does not get edited and it generates the B100. And reason why it is called as B148 is that it is around 48% of the size of B100. You can see over here same codon is going to be utilized. But if it is going inside the liver, it is going to generate the B100. If it is going inside, happening inside the intestine, there is going to be a RNA additive, and that generates the ApoB48. ApoE is basically arginine rich protein, and it has various isoforms. Out of this, ApoE4 is considered to be used, utilized in development of the senile dementia or Alzheimer's disease. It is also associated with the lipoprotein glomerulopathy, kidney disease. So this is just a total tabular form of each and every type of apoprotein, their component, and their functions along with their molecular weight. So now we'll start with the metabolism of lipoproteins. So there is a forward cholesterol pathway and reverse cholesterol pathway. Forward cholesterol pathway constitutes the exogenous as well as endogenous pathway, while reverse cholesterol is constitutes the HDL metabolism. So we'll start with the chylomicron metabolism, which constitutes how it generates and how it gets degraded. So fat component, whatever we are eating inside the body, that goes into the intestine, and with the help of bile salts, it gets converted into the micellar form. Now, how this micellar form gets absorbed, it is very interesting. It reaches the intestinal wall enterocyte, and from here, what happens is that ACAT is going to get activated and chylomicron is going to get generated. Now, how this chylomicron is generated? So, what happens in the enterocyte is that there is a NPC1 LP, Niemann-Pick C1 like protein, where micelles will get attached and it will be internalized. Now, endoplasmic reticulum inside the enterocyte will constitute the triglyceride, and microscopic transfer protein will release it inside the cell. Now it is free available. Now ApoB48 will be generated inside the enterocyte and it will encapsulate the triglyceride. Now at this point it is a nascent chylomicrons. Now whatever the cholesterol that is coming from the food and other places, that will be converted into cholesterol ester with the help of ACAT2. Now these cholesterol esters will get inside the chylomicrons and it will complete the chylomicron structure. Still there is a space remaining. Actual chylomicron has not been made. Now this chylomicron, nascent chylomicron, will go through the lymphatic system, lacteal glands as well as thoracic duct, will enter the systemic circulation, and then ApoC and ApoE coming from the HDL, they are going to be attaching with the chylomicrons. Now these chylomicrons will circulate around in the body. Now once it reaches the required component, it binds with the lipoprotein lipase in the cell, and what happens is that ApoC and ApoA1, they are removed. Sorry, glycerol and fatty acids are utilized inside the cell and they are removed, and structure of the chylomicron is getting reduced, which is called as chylomicron remnant. Here this ApoA1 and C will be removed and this part is separated. Now based on, depending on the ApoE lipoprotein which is attached, it is going back inside the liver, attaches with the heparan sulfate or LDL receptor related protein which is ApoE, and then it is digested inside the liver, which is going to reduce the triglyceride component inside the liver. So that constitutes the chylomicron pathway. Let's talk about VLDL, IDL as well as LTL, which is considered as an endogenous pathway. Here we are not utilizing any component that is coming from the diet. That's why it is called as a endogenous pathway. So what happens is that it is almost just like chylomicron with regards to the VLDL, but here your cell is not enterocyte but it is a hepatocyte. So triglycerides that are generated will be liberated inside the cell, and instead of ApoB40 we have a ApoB100 that will encapsulate the triglycerides. Now cholesterol, which is generated inside the body, not the coming from the diet, which is coming from the HMG-CoA that converts into mevalonate, then squalene, and ultimately cholesterol, which is getting converted into the cholesterol esters. This is going again into the internalized structure of the VLDL, which is going to generate the actual VLDL. Now this VLDL will go into the systemic circulation. Okay, so now what happens with VLDL is that the circulating HDL will provide them with the ApoC as well as ApoE. Now based on this ApoC and E, lipoprotein lipase will attach, that is present on the adipocyte or myocyte. It is going to bind with the VLDL, and cholesterol as well as triglycerides, so fatty acid as well as glycerol component will be removed from the triglyceride. So now your triglycerides are less than 1500, and that is going to go back to the liver. But here the component will remain attached to the lipoprotein lipase, and which is called as VLDL remnant. Now this VLDL remnant again gets reduced, which have a less than 30% of triglyceride, is considered as a LDL, which has a very low amount of triglycerides, which can go into the further metabolism where it gets converted into the LDL, and here it loses ApoE as well as ApoC, which then goes into the various cell walls as well as utilizes a component of various structure. Now this structure which is remaining is going to bind with the LDL receptor, and it is going to get degraded. Now how this happens is with the LDL. ApoB100 will have a, inside the cell there will be a clathrin coated pits which is going to internalize the whole LDL. Then it is going to take up, internalize it, and in the presence of lysosome, LDL will be digested and cholesterol will be liberated. Now this cholesterol inside the cell will be utilized for various function, as well as it can go into the deposition. Okay, so now this completes our discussion regarding the LDL. Now talk about the HDL, how it generates. So ApoA1 present inside, generated inside the liver, comes out, and it is bound with the basically ABCA1 as well as SRB1. Now going forward, various cholesterol ester gets bind with the ApoA1 and generates the pre-beta HDL, which in presence of alkate gets converted into mature HDL. Still it is HDL3. Now what happens, how does this happen, is that alkate converts cholesterol into cholesterol ester. At the same time lecithin gets converted into lysolecithin. Now these cholesterol esters, they are going to activate the alkate and they are going to bind with it. Now this component is internalized. Now where does this cholesterol is coming from? Is coming from the various part of the macrophages as well as forms for cells, or coming from the adipocytes. So this is getting continuously HDL, and this is constituting the HDL. Now this HDL again goes further into the metabolism part and gets converted into HDL2, and once ApoE binds with it, it gets converted into HDL1. Now in between here, whatever the ApoE and B components are there, they are going to utilize, with the help of cholesterol ester transfer protein, they are going to transport the cholesterol ester and in turn take up the triglycerides. So this HDL2 goes back into the liver for the digestion part or metabolism part. So this is how internal structure, whatever the cholesterol is generated, is getting digested and coming back to the body, and this is getting converted into the bile salt on a later structure. There can be hyperlipoproteinemia and hypolipoproteinemia, primary and secondary. This is a practical classification of finding out the chyluria, sorry, chyle-like blood, where you have instead of normal, you have different levels of fatty acids inside the blood. So type 1 is high chylomicron, type 2 is high LDL. Likewise, there is a classification. So basically in type 1 hyperlipoproteinemia, what you will see in the blood of patients is like this. Once centrifugation is done, lipase is deficient, chylomicron will be increased and triacylglycerol will be very much high. Type 2A, here you have a defective LDL receptors, also called as familial hypercholesterolemia. Type 2B, you have too much amount of ApoB. Type 3, you have abnormal ApoE. Okay, and type 4, too much amount of VLDL is generated, so triacylglycerol will be increased. In type 5, it is basically secondary condition. You have too much amount of total cholesterol and triglyceride in the body. These are some of the examples what happens in the hypercholesterolemia. There will be deposit of cholesterol in the various tissues. Xanthocele, sorry, xanthelasmas normally seen, you can see over here, the same. Basically, hypercholesterolemia. There is eruptive xanthoma as well as the, sorry, plus Palmer's xanthoma, you can see over here, deposits or tendon xanthoma. Then there is a hypolipoproteinemia, beta lipoproteinemia, and familial lipoprotein deficiency or Tanger's disease. Here your APO is defective. In A beta lipoproteinemia, your ApoB is defective. So this is your condition. ApoB is decreased, low level of VLDL, LDL, fat soluble vitamins are not there. Ultimately, retardation comes. Tanger's disease, what is there? Your HDL will be decreased and causes the CAD, cardiovascular disease. And ultimately, you have the fatty liver condition, storage form. Okay, so that is leading to, sorry, okay, which condition that can cause the fatty liver? High fat diet, starvation, diabetes, alcoholism, high cholesterol diet, and dietary deficiency. Lipotropic factor, essential fatty acids, vitamin E, and selenium. These are the conditions which can lead to fatty liver. Some of the components that can block the fat inside the liver or fatty liver: choline, methionine, vitamin B12, as well as folic acid. Then comes the triacylglycerol metabolism. Okay, how it is generated, what happens of TG, and inside the adipose tissue. So how they are generated in the adipose tissue, as well as liver and small intestine. So this is the process. You have a glycerol inside the liver or glucose in the liver or adipose tissue. From both ways, either through glycerol 3-phosphate or DHA, you have the glycerol 3-phosphate gets converted into acyl glycerol 3-phosphate. Acyl coenzyme can be anything. Any acyl group can be present. Then 1,2-diacylglycerol, another acyl coenzyme is added. Then diacylglycerol is generated, another acyl coenzyme is added, and triacylglycerol is added. So from glycerol, how triacylglycerol is generated, this is the process. So now what happens to the triacylglycerol in the liver? VLDL, that is package form inside, released into the blood, and then it is delivered to the peripheral tissue. So here, whatever inside the adipose tissue, there is a continuous generation and lipolysis going on. Depending on the external factors, it will be increased or decreased. This is the degradation with the help of lipase. Liver, what you have to go through pyruvate or can generate the glucose. Then comes the complex lipids. I think last. Phospholipids, how they are generated, how they are degraded, and another component. So how phosphoric acid is added into the component of diacyl glycerol and ultimately generating the glycerol phospholipids. Okay. So phosphatidic acid can generate diacyl glycerol and ultimately glycerophospholipid that can convert, make either phosphatidylcholine, phosphatidylethanolamine, or phosphatidylserine, or it can go into the CDP diacylglycerol, can generate the phosphatidylinositol, cardiolipin, or phosphatidylglycerol. Okay, so this is how glycerophospholipid is generated inside the body. This is generation of the phosphatidylcholine as well as phosphatidylserine. How this degraded with the help of phospholipases. Now there are different types of phospholipases and where they act depending on them, they are considered. Carbon 1, 2, 3 and component. Phospholipase C will act on the phosphate group, D will act on the head group, A1 will remove the chain 1, A2 will remove the chain. How this phosphatidylcholine gets degraded? Lysolecithin is generated with the help of phospholipase A2, lysophospholipase is coming, then glycerophospholipid is out generated. Ultimately, choline is liberated, and what you get is glycerol 3-phosphate. So, some of the storage diseases. Basically, what happens if your complex lipid are not getting properly utilized? One is RDS. Here they create a pressure generation or problem is inflation. Then if expiration happens without lung surfactant, both side of the inflated terminal sac will bind with each other, and because of surface tension, it will not inflate again. So this is sphingolipids. Sorry. Important ones: Gaucher's disease and Niemann-Pick disease. In Gaucher's disease, there is a glucocerebrosidase or beta glucosidase is not there. So ceramide is not generated. Niemann-Pick, there is a problem with the sphingomyelinase. Gangliosides, GM1 gangliosides, you have a beta galactosidase that is not working properly. Okay. Tay-Sachs disease, deficiency of hexosaminidase A. Sandoff disease, hexosaminidase B. Fabry disease, alpha galactosidase is not there. So this is your final sphingolipidosis condition. Your disease, Tay-Sachs, Fabry, Gaucher's, Gaucher's, Niemann-Pick's, as well as Farber's disease, and related enzyme deficiency. And what you have is the related clinical symptoms. Tay-Sachs disease is related with mental retardedness as well as blindness. Fabry's, you have skin rash. Okay, Gaucher's disease, there is enlarged liver and spleen. Niemann-Pick's, you have a fatal early. Basically, Niemann-Pick's disease will cause early life death. Farber's, there is a dermatitis and skeletal deformation. So I think this completes discussion regarding the metabolism part of lipid.